Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Jason Falls Show. That makes me your host, Jason Falls. Good Tuesday morning to you. I know we didn't have a chance to chat last week because we had some illness that affected the show, but we're back this week and with last week's guest even. So we're making up for lost time today. Today on the program, we're going to jump into one of my favorite subjects, which is understanding how consumers' brains work. The word you put around that normally is neuromarketing. If you've read anything by Roger Dooley, who we've had on the show before, there's also a gentleman by the name of Martin Lindstrom who's got a great book called Brand Washing that gets a little creepy about how neuromarketing can be misused, I think, in some cases. But we've talked about it before on the show. Today, however, we have Felix Cao from Happy Buying Brain. He is here to talk about neuromarketing. How do customers think? What does knowing that tell us about how to connect with them? It's kind of the Sherlock Holmesian side of marketing, in my estimation, and always fun to talk about. So I really enjoy getting to know more about that topic. And it helps us understand how our consumers think and what we can do to understand how our consumers think so that we can drive better business. Then I've got a couple of events to remind you of. One in Chicago you've heard of if you're a regular listener. The other was just announced last week in Washington, D.C. That one's coming up this coming week, actually. So I want to make sure you know about it, even though it's short notice, and I'll be talking about there, because it's a little different than my normal stuff. I'm going to be talking about my kids, which is kind of fun, but I'll tell you more about that a little bit later. Plus, the other speakers at both events are awesome, so I hope you'll be able to come out. But first, I was running a conference in Louisville a few years ago and kept thinking that we really needed to record the sessions. We can hang the videos out there on our website. We can at least maybe publish them as resources to the people who came, maybe even sell them and monetize them to people who didn't come after the fact. And wouldn't it be nice to have a professional production of what we were doing? Camera shots, switching from the wide shot of the stage, close-ups of the speaker, back to the slides, all that good stuff. But a TV production set up like that, back when I was pondering this in 2014, 2015, cost a lot of money. And then I met Nick Mattingly, who reached out to me. He was an entrepreneur, startup guy in Louisville, Kentucky, and he told me about his company, Switcher Studio. They figured out a way to do the big fancy TV production truck thing on an iPad, and then figured out how to add cameras to the show so a director could just tap on the camera options on their switcher on their iPad, and the cameras are all iOS devices on the same Wi-Fi network. So no big fancy production truck, no expensive cameras. You're just using the phones that you or your audience members even have. Nick explained to me how one person running the direction or hitting the buttons on the switcher plus 3 or 4 iPhones could give us the professional TV production we needed without any other equipment. And I thought, are you kidding me? And he wasn't kidding me. Switcher Studio came in and did video production for Digital Crossroads, the event I was involved with back then, for a couple of years. And the original idea, the original concept, was to allow people to do event production video. But then this whole live streaming thing, like what we're doing over on LinkedIn right now, came to bear, and Switcher Studio became a LinkedIn Live partner, and they allow us to have fancy screen productions and stuff like that. So I'm getting ready to talk about how you can get it. So if you're watching the live stream over on LinkedIn, or you go back and watch the video after the fact, if you're listening on the podcast, I'm getting ready to throw up a URL, switcherstudio.com/falls. You can see that as a graphic below me on the video feed on LinkedIn. So it's a professional, graphic system underneath me that tells people where to go. If you go to that URL, switcherstudio.com/falls, and make sure you use that URL, you can get a free 2-week trial. After that, you can get 10% off your subscription if you just use the discount code FALLS. And so the people watching on the feed are seeing that on the screen now. When Felix comes on here in a couple of minutes, you're going to see me and Felix on the same video feed at the same time, a split screen sort of A-B view, if you know the TV lingo. And that's all because Switcher Studio provides us with the fancy capabilities to do professional broadcast production without the professional broadcast cost. Switcher Studio makes our live recordings of this podcast look professional. You can let them do the same for your live streaming. Just go to switcherstudio.com/falls for that. If you are dialing into the live recording of the podcast on LinkedIn, you can jump over into the comments section and ask questions and interact with us here on the show. I usually have to disclaim that it's technology permitting, and so we'll go over here and click a button and see if the technology is permitting us today, because sometimes, it hiccups and doesn't work. I'm clicking and clicking and clicking, and I'm going to get myself in my ear, which is going to annoy me. Nope, it looks like it's working. So Michael Daugherty is here. He is a business owner. He says, good morning. Good morning, Michael. Matthew Rolnick from Groupon, who was our guest a few weeks ago, is back with us. Good morning, Matthew. Good to see you. And Hustle in Maine says, Que pasa from Boston. Que pasa. That's great. Thanks, Joseline. Thanks for coming by again. I would fumble around and say something in Spanish, but that would just be insulting and stupid because I don't know Spanish very well. I know how to ¿Dónde está tu baños? That's what I need to know, because normally that's the only thing I need to ask. Or más grande cerveza, por favor. That's what I know. Give me a beer and tell me where the bathroom is. That's all me being the stupid American tourist who just goes to Cozumel every now and then. So that's what I know. There you go. You know what? A funny story. I'll tell this. Joseline, you might appreciate this. I thought it was hysterical. I was at lunch in Birmingham, Alabama a few years ago, and it was at a typical Mexican restaurant where business people would come for lunch or whatnot. And at lunch one day, there was a table of people celebrating someone's birthday, obviously. And so the wait staff came out and they sang a song and in Spanish, but they did not sing the Feliz Cumpleaños or whatever the birthday song is in Spanish. They sang something else, and I was trying to pick out the words. And I'm like, I don't know what they're saying. But then they said two words, which made me go, something's up here. So I pulled my waiter aside and I said, you guys aren't actually singing happy birthday, are you? And he got really red in the face and was like, no, we're not. Because the two words that I heard them say were locos gringos. And so they were singing a song about us crazy Americans, which I thought was absolutely appropriate. And I applauded them and thought it was absolutely the funniest thing I've ever really seen happen in business. I don't know what all the words were. It could have been incredibly insulting, but I don't care. They've been plenty insulted enough in their work and their immigration to this country. And so they got back at them, at least that day. And I thought it was funny. So there you go. There's my borderline inappropriate story for the show today. So there you go. All right. So the comment thread over on LinkedIn is working. So jump in if you want to ask Felix questions or me questions or participate in the conversation. I'll do my very best to look over and see what's going on in that world. Okay, so let's stop beating around the bush. Felix Cao is with us today. He is the founder of Happy Buying Brain, which is an agency that helps businesses understand their customers' brains better when it comes to persuading them to buy from their businesses or brands instead of competitors. His background includes launching, growing, and selling a very successful app called Surprise Me, and he's not afraid of getting into a raucous conversation with us this morning because he's Canadian. He has good health care. Felix, welcome to the show. Good to see you, man.
Hi, Jason. How are you doing today? Glad to be on your show.
I'm doing great. So take us down the path of how you got to focus on neuromarketing, because it's one of those segments of marketing that I think is fundamental to what we do. The first rule of communications I always learned was to know your audience, but it's brain science. So we're talking about psychology, sociology, or even biology and chemistry. So not very many people go deep with it. What was your path to get here?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we'll do is we'll do like a time lapse. So if you look at the whole concept of neuromarketing, you're combining the neuroscience, which is the study of the nervous system. In this case, is pretty much the brain, right? And you're combining that with business. So if we were to all jump in a time machine right now and go back, let's say 2 decades, my initial aspiration was actually aspiring to get into optometry. So that's where the educational background of biological sciences come in. And also, while I was going to school, I also took a lot of psychology as well. So, psychology and biological sciences forms a solid foundation when it comes to the neuroscience perspective of the neuromarketing side. Also, during that time, what was happening was I got more involved in sales and marketing, more specifically on the self-employed side with finances, investments, and real estate. And what that ultimately led to was getting introduced to the startup community. And that's where, nearly a decade of my experience comes from, was mainly in the tech and mobile space. So what I saw in that space was that right now, especially with the advent of artificial intelligence and VR, it's just becoming a part of our everyday lives, very similar to what we saw in the early 2000s with the internet And then what followed up after that was the mobile revolution. So today, what I truly believe is that we're actually at the cusp of another tech revolution that involves the mass adoption of AI. So you can look at like chatbots, also voice command technology like Siri and Alexa and so forth. And all of that, neuroscience is at the core of a lot of those innovations. So those insights and research of how the brain works could also be applied to areas and fields outside of technology, and especially true when it comes to applying neuroscience to marketing. So that's pretty much how I got here today. So is this a combination of the educational background which lies in biological sciences, psychology, and then you combine that with the 15 years plus of sales and marketing, and with the opportunity that comes with the introduction of artificial intelligence. Because what's that really going to do is it's going to really popularize the concept of neurosciences. So anytime there's a trend, any concepts that are associated with it becomes familiarized and becomes popular. So that's why I believe the timing is optimal right now for neuromarketing to really penetrate into the marketing community.
That's great. So I want to ask a couple of questions here. First of all, are the kinds of projects you work on, the consulting you do, the clients you work with, really more, sort of conversion based on their websites with chatbots and things like that? Or is it a bigger problem to solve, or is it a little bit of both? And then when someone comes to you with an engagement that says, okay, I need to understand my customers' brains better, what does that engagement look like for you? What do you do to get in and do the dirty work with people?
Sure. So of course we like to do a discovery call. So that involves learning more about their business, the goals they want to achieve. In addition to that, their pain points that they're looking to solve. What are the causes of those pain points are very important, and what have they tried to fix it, and then we want to see how their business look like once all those problems are solved. And the flip side to that is also what are the consequences if they do not solve those problems. So once we have a holistic point of view of the problems that they're trying to solve, that will give us an idea in terms of how to strategize and come up with a tactical plan and a clear roadmap to to solve their pain points and provide solutions that address those issues from a neuromarketing approach. So in order to do that, you're taking something that's complex to a lot of people, right? Because it's brain science, like how you mentioned, a lot of people don't have backgrounds when it comes to the sciences and so forth. And what we found to be truly effective when it comes to that is we want to keep things simple, explain things in layman terms, and minimize as much technical jargon as possible. So a lot of that's actually using metaphors and analogies that are related to their profession.
Very good. So take us through the things that happen in a consumer's brain when they are either in the buying process or confronted with marketing message. Where are most consumer engagements maybe falling flat that understanding neuromarketing and neuroscience can help improve?
Absolutely. So the biggest mistake that we see is when a marketing campaign is mainly targeting the logical brain or the neocortex. And the reason for that is, so the brain is it's a complex machine, but at the same time, it's a cognitive miser. So really, in other words, it's pretty much lazy, right? So the reason why it's like that is because the neocortex actually consumes a huge amount of energy. So it would totally shut down if all the stimuli came in there and had to process all of it. So what it does is actually relies on the primal brain to be like the gatekeeper or to be the filter of information. So that's very important in terms of to explain how the brain is structured, but more importantly, how actually information actually physically enters the brain. So there's a neuroscientist by the name of Paul MacLean in the 1960s. He came up with the model called the triune brain model. So it explains the brain pretty much in three parts, right? So you have the brainstem, which initially the information initially enters the human brain, and that consists of the reptilian brain. So that's pretty much responsible for your fight or flight. It's fast, automatic, reflexive, and so forth, right? And once you get to the second part of the brain, which is the midbrain, that deals more with the emotions and social situations. So together, that those two parts consist of the primal brain. So the information has to be structured in a way where it's receptive to the primal brain in order for that information to get actually passed on to the cortex. So a lot of the times that we see that if a campaign is mainly structured to the point where it's targeting the cortex, then what ends up happening is the persuasive power greatly diminishes because it's not able to convince the primal brain to let it through to the neocortex for rational processing.
Is this why that most people's buying decisions are made on emotion and not rational thought?
That's correct. So when you look at actually the path flow of information that enters, like how I mentioned, it enters through the brainstem and then it finally gets to the neocortex, which is the last part of the brain to receive it, and that's the logical brain. So when you look at the flow of information, that's why it's based on logic on impulse at first, and then once it passes through that filter, and then it goes more into the rationale, and it starts to look at data, facts, and everything from a logical point of view.
I never really thought of it in terms of the path into the brain, and you have to get past the gatekeeper of the reptilian brain and whatnot to get there. That's a good way to think about it. I like that. I like that logic. So I like that logic. That's ironic. So I'd really be interested to hear some examples, if you can share them, of clients who have leveraged neuromarketing insights to sort of improve their bottom line or their conversion rates or whatnot. Do you have examples of how the practice comes to bear on that all important question of ROI?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'll do is I'll provide two examples. So I'll provide one like more on a global level that includes like a global company, so that people have an idea of like the type of marketing impact it will have, and also I'll include like one that's a happy buying brain example that we helped with a client as well. So I'll start off with our own example. So we help we usually focus on business of all sizes, but a lot of business that we're finding are small and medium sized businesses, because the concept of neuromarketing is something that's new to a lot of them, but it has game-changing results. So the example that I'll use is, a restaurant that we worked with. They're running Facebook ads, and their ad was a very simple. They had a photo of the food, and also, underneath they had highlights of that new food, right? So what they're finding was that the Facebook ad was not converting the way that they like it. So we had a look at it, and what we did was, so just to backtrack a little bit. So in order for like the primal brain likes information presented in certain ways, right? So it likes it novel, visual, tangible, fast, simple, and from a high status position, right? So we made sure that now we had to change and made modifications to the ad so that it satisfies those criteria. So at first they're just basing on logic, a lot of the main points. So what we did was we provided a large visual of the dish that they're looking to promote, and in order to make it novel, the best way to do it is to actually have like feature, right? So featuring that specific dish. So that's how we satisfy that condition. Also in terms of providing, is this a safe choice to eat at? Because that's why every restaurant that or anything that we do, we always wonder, is this a choice that we're going to regret, right? So one way to, the primal brain is definitely thinking about that all the time, because it's concerned. It's about its survival and safety. So the way to satisfy that criteria is to increase to show the social proof around it. So at that time the restaurant was actually the number one voted restaurant in the city. So we made sure to highlight that it actually had a 5-star rating. On top of that, you also want to emotionally engage them in terms of the social proof. So in the picture itself, we had multiple couples that were actually enjoying and smiling while they're enjoying the food. And also, in order to deliver from the point of view that's a high status position, we had a local influencer actually join that picture. So now they're at the center of the picture. So, and then after that, that's when we had these nuances, and finally the more of the logical reasons why you want to visit. But once we structured we made those types of modifications, we found conversions rate to increase 3 to 4 times. So that ended up being tens of thousands of dollars in terms of sales for them.
That's great. It's I want to ask you this question because
Sure.
as I heard some of those sort of things that you did, I
Hmm.
think a lot of marketers out there would say, well, yeah, all of those are sort of logical decisions that we would make in advertising creative and things like that over the years. Does that imply then that we've been using neuromarketing maybe sloppily until recent years when people have put a little bit more refinement on it? Because when you say the social proof, highlighting the 5 stars, pictures of people being happy. Those are
Hmm.
things that I think we've been doing sort of intuitively, but maybe not with the science to back it up. Does that sound right?
Exactly. So that's correct, because whenever you're more purposeful and conscious about delivering things in certain sequences or steps, the actions can become a lot more repeatable. So once you're able to repeat and do it purposely, then your results also changes as well, and it scales massively.
Very cool.
So in terms of the traditional marketing is explains like the what, so like that's the strategy, but the neuromarketing is explains the why and the how. So that's the best way to draw the relationship between like traditional marketing versus neuromarketing.
Very nice. I remember I interviewed Martin Lindstrom once
Mhm.
after his book Brandwashing came out, and I recall in that book his account of I think it was a Japanese department store
Right.
that was using specifically programmed music to potentially affect the future customer loyalty of babies in utero
Mhm.
shopping in the store. Is there a limit to how far marketers should go in using these insights? Do we have an ethical standard there we need to think about?
You know what? Like that's actually a good question. That's very complex and has a lot of variable. I think at the end of the day, we could probably group this in as if it gets pushed too far. Is it also considered a form of manipulation, or is it still falls within the area of influencing that's actually falls under the boundaries of ethical marketing, right? So because it's a very complex issue, there's lots of questions that come along with it. I think the main thing is what's the true intentions of the brand and the company. If they have good intentions, meaning they provide the best value in terms of solving the pain points for their customers. Also, they help them achieve to become the best versions of themselves. I think all those points, make neuromarketing very valid. So those are it depends because at the end of the day, neuromarketing is a tool, right? It's a tool that gives marketers and companies greater insights in terms of the preferences that the consumers wants. And so what it does is allows the companies and the businesses to adapt and to provide those new solutions that satisfy those true desires of consumers. So when we look at from a complex point of view, we're looking from the interaction of a marketplace. Also, with the companies, is it the companies are they doing a disservice to the customers now if they don't leverage the neuromarketing to the full extent by providing inferior products, or let's say that they don't leverage neuromarketing in their advertising, and now their message is not getting out there. Now people who would need those solutions, they're not becoming aware of those new products that are out there. So now is that a question of eliminating freedom of choice for those people? And at the same time, you have consumers too, right? So consumers are always they're looking for the best solutions for their pain points, but at the same time they want to their transparent they want transparency, they want ethics, and they want their privacy to be respected. So you have this kind of huge ecosystem that's working together, and it's a working progress. And over time we'll gain a lot more clarity of in terms of where that common overlap is, where it'll confer the most benefits to all the parties involved. But at the end of the day, I think what really needs to happen is what's the mission and the intentions of the companies, and how do they plan on using neuromarketing.
So I'm going to turn over to the LinkedIn thread right now. There's a
Sure.
question there from Husseline who says, "Is multivariate testing involved and/or split testing to validate the neuromarketing theories in your work?"
Yeah, certainly. Like split testing is a huge one because you definitely want to see how people respond. So the primal brain, one of the criteria that it responds from is it's very binary. So contrast is a big criteria because from a survival point of view, it needs to quickly make a decision on whether something or someone is a threat or non-threat, good or bad. So when you're doing things like split testing, you're able to find down to the roots of, is this something that the primal brain is going to make a quick decision on in terms of being receptive to that new modification through that split test.
Very nice. Good deal. So one last question from me.
Sure.
There might be a couple more that come in here, but what businesses are best suited to work with someone like you in a neuromarketing sort of environment? Who needs it the most?
We work with businesses and companies across many industries. So we're talking about restaurants, like the example I gave you, trades that we helped out, trade companies, companies that are in the medical field as well. So I would say any company that is looking to, boost their marketing to the next level and really understand, what really makes their customers' brain tick.
Very good. Felix, where can people find you on the interwebs?
Absolutely. So there's three main places. The first place is on LinkedIn. Just type in Felix Cao, and I'm more than happy to connect with people on there. You could contact me directly via email at felix@happybuyingbrain.com. And of course, check out my website, happybuyingbrain.com. There's a contact form. If you fill it out, I'll get back to you right away. And then, for those who are wanting to learn more, I also have a blog on the website, so feel free to subscribe as well.
Very nice. I've dropped a couple of those links over there to
That's awesome.
Happy Buying Brain and LinkedIn's your profile on LinkedIn over on the thread on the LinkedIn thing, so people can find you, and we'll add those to the show notes as well to make sure
Excellent.
People find you. Felix, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate you doing this. I know you're off to Asia, I believe it is. So happy travels, safe travels, and we'll maybe talk to you down the road sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I definitely appreciate it. It was fun, Jason.
Yep. Felix Cao here with us today, and great to have him on the show. Neuromarketing is just one of those things that fascinates me. My kids will tell you that we spend a lot of time, or I spend a lot of time. Sometimes they're getting old enough to join me now. I spend a lot of time watching the Sherlock Holmesian, dramas and stuff, the CSIs and the crime shows. But it's all with that sort of, the ones that fascinate me the most are the ones like Criminal Minds and whatnot that get into sort of the neuroscience of criminal activity. And so I obviously don't want to think about neuroscience from a criminal activity standpoint in my work, but I love understanding how people think and how people tick so that we might be able to take advantage of those opportunities and build better websites, build better apps, build better marketing mechanisms to help them buy. My attitude has always been, we're helping people buy. We're not trying to sell them something. And so I think, to Felix's point, if you have that attitude, you're probably going to steer clear of those ethical concerns that were brought up in Martin Lindstrom's book. If you haven't read Brand Washing, go check that out. There's a couple parts of it that'll creep you out. And I have a sneaking suspicion, I didn't ask him this question, but I have a sneaking suspicion that Felix is probably going to be writing a book at some point, because he's a smart guy, and that'll be coming up, I'm sure, soon. And we'll have him back on the show, I'm sure, to talk about that and other things. All right, so everyone, coming up in just 2 weeks, or actually, no, it's coming up this weekend. Goodness gracious, I forgot to update my notes from last week. But coming up this weekend, in fact, on Friday, I'm getting on a plane to jump up to the Mandarin Oriental in Washington, D.C. I'll be speaking at the Dad 2.0 Summit. I'm super excited to attend Dad 2.0 for the first time. I know CC Chapman, one of my buddies, spoke there years ago and has always had good things to say about it. I've watched the event and admired it for a long time. But I've not been invited to speak. It started as a blogger conference with a bend on teaching brands that dads weren't something to make fun of and insult, and ads focused on moms or parenting. If you remember the dad can't take care of the kids, so we help you ads in the early 2000s. This event almost single-handedly stopped that proliferation by bringing an enormous community of dad bloggers and active involved dads together to illustrate their perspectives and values to brands and advertisers. It's also a blogger creator conference that helps interested dads, content creators, establish their brands, learn how to create content and such. They have sessions for business owners and brand managers on how collaborating with this audience is smart and how to market to dads and men in interesting ways and all that good stuff. I've been asked to come talk, but not about influencer marketing or even marketing. I'm going to talk about how I not only monitor and protect my kids in their use of social media, but how I take it further and teach them how to embrace social networks to become creators and brands themselves. You may know my son Grant is an aspiring rapper. and designer. He does some graphic design stuff too, but most of his internet presence is all about his music. So he's got a SoundCloud account with a lot of his music, but also Instagram, YouTube, and other platforms that he'll eventually figure out how to use to promote his music. My daughter, Katie, has experimented with a couple of ideas, but has landed on being a young adult book reviewer on YouTube. So I'm actively coaching and encouraging my kids, not just putting up boundaries and acting like social media is some sort of awful pit of degradation they shouldn't be involved with. I'm actually excited about sharing their stories with this crowd because I get excited about them sharing their creative ideas and whatnot on the internet. I'm a social dad. I've got social kids. And so I'm going to talk about that. I'm anticipating getting some great questions and ideas from all the people there, not just in my talk, but in others. I'm also going to be interviewing a bunch of folks while I'm there to bring back to the podcast. So it's going to be a lot of fun. You're going to benefit from some of the people that I run into there. But you can come to the event too if you just go to dad2.com. That's dad and the number 2.com and look for the register button in the upper right-hand corner. You can come this weekend to Washington, D.C., and be at that event. If you're a blogger or content creator, it's less than $300 to come for all 3 days. Brands and businesses will pay a little more, but you're going to walk away with new partnerships and relationships that you probably have a hard time finding elsewhere, and they can help your brand. So come see me. This is going to be a fun one. I've also, real quickly, let's go over, thanks again to Joseline and others for chiming in today. I know Jessica Moore is in there again, so thanks for coming by, Jessica. Appreciate you being here again. And I promise we're going to have a drink soon. Jessica's down in Frankfurt, and I keep trying to schedule a stop off to have a drink with her on the way home. And my clients and other things just derail things, and I don't ever get the chance to do that. So it's going to happen. We keep rescheduling, but it'll happen soon. I'd like to say hello to a couple of folks today who are also listening in on the show, I think for the first time. So Niklesh Tiwari is in here today. Barbara Hannon's back. She's not a first-timer. She's been here a long time and has been a guest on the show, so she's listening in today. Nick Landers is also in there, as is my buddy Ben Whitaker from D-Line. He's in there. India White has stopped by today. Thank you for coming by, India. There's a couple of other people who have liked the thread or are listening in today. Bernie Fussnegger is here. So, hey, Bernie, good morning from Louisville. Thank you for chiming in and saying hello to us this morning. It's good to have you listening in on the show. I've also another event to talk about. I've told you this before, but it is worth repeating. I've been invited to serve as one of the keynote speakers along with Jeff Blair, one of our clients here at Cornet, at the Influencer Marketing Strategy Summit in Chicago this April. The event is billed as the premier influencer marketing conference to help marketers launch, scale, and measure their influencer programs. Jeff and I will be walking people through a fun case study with Jeff's efforts over at the University of Kentucky Healthcare, where he and we helped him leverage influencers of all types to support a storytelling campaign. But the agenda for the event is huge. Jim Tobin from Carousel is emceeing the event. Other speakers include Betty Ann Schlossberg from Lyft, Lauren Thomas from Southwest Airlines, Gwen Roney from Carhartt, Crystal Duncan from Edelman, Miri Rodriguez from Microsoft. It's really a headliner event of people doing the business of influencer marketing and great people to learn from. So the conference is in Chicago, April 29th and 30th. There is a pre-conference workshop day on April 28th as well. I think Jeff and I speak on the middle day, April 29th, but the whole thing's fantastic. Early bird tickets are available until February 13th, which is in the past. So you can't get early bird tickets anymore. But I do have a discount code. So you can still get a little off if you go to jason.online/IMS Chicago and use the code Jason15, then you can get that discount. And I see Yana Rabinovitz is over in the things asking for links to these things. So yeah, let me do that. And I'll copy the link to the Dad 2.0. Alana, thank you so much for adding that comment to the thread so that we can share that. And Nicholas corrected me. He's been joining us for a few weeks and he loves it. Thank you, Nicholas. I appreciate it. He's at Course 5i, apparently. I need to look into understand more about what that is. He's a senior analyst. So thanks for coming in. That's pretty awesome. And Ilana joins us. For those of you who've been around a while and been following me for a while, you may know Ilana from being one of my stable of authors on the old Social Media Explorer. So she contributed quite a while. She was at Lion Brand Yarns for quite some time. She's moved on to something else now, and I'm sure we'll be telling you more about that at some point because I've been in contact with her about what she's doing, and so that's all good fun. So anyway, So the Influencer Marketing Strategy Summit, join Jeff and me there. There really isn't an event like this out there focused on influencer strategies. If you go to the blog at jasonfalls.com/blog, I do have a banner over there. So if you miss the links or whatever, you can find it pretty easily over there at jasonfalls.com. The Influencer Marketing Strategy Summit, jason.online/IMS Chicago. The link is in the LinkedIn thread. I'll put it in the show notes as well. And the discount code is Jason15, and you get a 15% discount, I believe, off of the price of that. Next week on the big program, Holly Spaeth joins us. She is the Director of Corporate Branding and Partnerships at Polaris. Polaris brands include the Polaris snowmobiles, Polaris RZR, and one of my favorite brands, Indian Motorcycles. I'm an aspirational fan of that brand. I don't ride a motorcycle. I don't have a motorcycle. I probably couldn't sit on a motorcycle long with my back issues, but I think they're pretty. I like them. I've taken pictures of them and said, this is the motorcycle I want one day if I ever have too much money and just need to spend it on something. Anyway, she'll be here to talk to us about marketing in the adventure space, how corporate branding and partnerships impacts her company, and how you can do the same for yours. So Holly Spaeth will join us. We'll record that show with a live stream on LinkedIn at 8 a.m. Eastern, 5 a.m. Pacific. Next Tuesday. If you can't join us live, the audio recording will hit the podcast feed later that morning. That's next Tuesday, March 3rd. We're going to have a special toast on that day as well, because it is Bottled in Bond Day, March 3rd. So I'll tell you more about that next week. That'll be live on LinkedIn, or you can catch the show whenever you like on the podcast. I wanted to also tell you, I spent some time last night recording an episode of the podcast, an interview episode, but with a couple of influencers here in Lexington, Kentucky, the Kentucky Taste Buds. I've got their business card right here if you're watching on the old video. So Lee and Tamara came in, and we spent some time just in the conference room here at Cornett chatting, and I pulled out the microphone and we recorded an episode, and I kind of explored their story, how they established themselves as influencers. They have made a transition now, and instead of just doing a podcast, or doing a terrestrial radio show through one of the radio stations here in Lexington. So it's an interesting story of how they have kind of built their sort of footprint and network in a local market. And so I think for brands, it'll be interesting to hear that story so that you can understand a little bit about what influencers go through and how they think about working with brands and such. But also for those of you who might be trying to build influencer brands for yourself or even your businesses, to see what they've gone through, the challenges they've had, the failures they think they've had. We had a really interesting discussion. So I'll be bringing that podcast episode to you probably later this week. It'll be not on the LinkedIn live stream. It's going to be recorded. I'm going to start doing more of those recorded episodes. As I told you, I'm going to this Dad 2.0 Summit. And so I'm literally going to walk around just with my phone, my voice dictator thing on the phone, and I'm going to interview people as quickly as I can grab them. And we might do little 5-minute episodes with just insights from this person or that person. So I'm going to try to collect more content to share with you here on the podcast, but those will be recorded podcast episodes on the feed only, not on LinkedIn Live. So be sure to dial up that podcast subscription wherever you get your podcasts. We're available all over the place. Google Play, Stitcher, iPhone, iPod, Apple, iTunes, whatever that thing's called. The behemoth, we're on the mothership, and all those other places. So there you go. All right, I got to hit a couple buttons here so that I can say to you, where's the right button to hit? I'll make sure I don't screw this up again because I do it all the time. That will do it for this edition of the Jason Falls Show. If you like the episode, share it with your networks or jump over and give us a review on your podcast network of choice. We certainly appreciate that. Look for me on the social networks. I'm Jason Falls just about everywhere. Just search for me. Until next time, everyone, I'll see you on the interwebs.